property that you, the people, own is the greatest guarantee of your freedom. Our poet G.K. Chesterton put it this way. He said, "Nor will you find a finer thing, though you may search it round, than thus to stand, one's own sole king, upon one's own sole ground." Now your constitution, understanding this, said that apart from some military bases and the 10 square miles of the District of Columbia in Washington, D.C., no land should be owned by the federal government. Now it's your constitution, use it or lose it, because at the moment 36% of the land area of the United States of America is owned by the federal government and is managed by a sinister communist front organization, and I use that word communist again advisedly, which is called the Bureau of Land Management. So arrogant has this bureau become that a few years ago, on the road between Northern California and Oregon, they set up a roadblock. They stopped a truck which contained a guy called LaVoy Finicum. He was a rancher, a really good guy. He had brought up 12 children of his own. He had brought up 60 foster children on behalf of the state. He was loved by everybody who knew him. He was a sensible, level-headed, very hard-working rancher. He was doing absolutely nothing wrong. They put a roadblock just around the corner of a snowdrift where he couldn't see it. They drove him off the road into that snowdrift. They then shouted at him for 20 minutes. Then when he got out of the car with his hands up, they shot him with a rubber bullet. He put his hand down to his side because it hurt him. And then they shot him with a real bullet and killed him. And here is what happened next. There was a press conference of the local sheriff who said that they had had FBI and other special forces operatives there with the police department at this raid where they shot him. And there were journalists there, very carefully selected from the left-wing media. Well, it's not very hard to select left-wing journalists from the media these days. You find hardly anybody except left-wing journalists. Not one of those journalists during that hour-long press conference asked the obvious question, what was it that they thought LaVoy Finicum had done wrong? He was not and still has not been accused of any criminal offence. But he was shot at the instigation of the Bureau of Land Management by the FBI. The case against those who are thought to have been his killers, because of course they still haven't admitted who fired the shot, is in court at this very moment, and I've communicated with Jeanette Finicum, his grieving widow, a very, very brave and gallant lady, and just since we were here, she's in court at this moment. Now I find it horrifying that this could have happened, and so I made some inquiries to find out why the FBI thought it appropriate to do this. And I discovered, to my horror, that James Comey, who was then the director of the FBI and has since been fired at my instigation, he was fired for the following reason. On the FBI website, there was a page, I couldn't believe it when I was told of it, but I went and looked it up, where it said this: if you say that you are a Christian, if you quote the Bible, if you quote the US Constitution, if you question any decision of the Supreme Court, if you say you don't like abortion, if you say you don't like homosexuality, if you do any of these things, then you are a terrorist and they can shoot you when they want. I couldn't believe this, but there it was on the website. I got in touch with Mr. Trump's people, and within the week, James Comey was gone. Thank God for that.